Commander Daniel Foster sat in the captain's chair of the U.S. Endeavour, watching the stars move across the viewscreen. The patrol through Sector 7 Alpha was routine, just like every other patrol his crew had done for the past 3 years. The Galactic Council called these missions important work. Daniel knew better. They were keeping humans out of the way. The Archon Assembly did not trust Earth. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage only 50 years ago, and the older species had made it clear that Deathworlders belonged on the edges, not in important decisions. Daniel had accepted this, mostly. His crew did their jobs well. They followed orders. They did not complain when better positions went to Valorians or Tyrshan officers. But inside, Daniel never stopped wishing for something more. Chief Communications Officer Raymond Price sat at his station, monitoring the endless stream of galactic traffic. His fingers moved across the console with practiced ease, filtering through thousands of signals. Most of it was routine. Trade ships reporting their positions, station updates, navigation beacons. Nothing that required attention. Then something changed. The alert tone was quiet but sharp. Raymond's head came up. His hands moved fast across the console, locking onto a new signal. The message came through broken and weak but clear enough to understand. This is Meridian Station requesting immediate assistance. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Life support critical. Weapons offline. We repeat, this is a distress call. Anyone receiving this message, please respond. The voice faded to static, then the message began again. Over and over. The call of people who believed someone would hear them. The call of people who hoped someone would come. Daniel was on his feet. He did not remember standing, but his command instincts had taken over before his mind caught up. Every eye on the bridge turned toward him. Location of that signal, he ordered. Raymond's fingers flew across his console. Sector 9 Delta, sir. That is deep in contested space. The station is the Meridian Research Outpost. The Endeavour went quiet. Everyone knew the Meridian Station. It was famous in certain circles for all the wrong reasons. The station housed researchers from multiple species, trying to work together on problems that affected everyone. Climate repair, weapons control, disease prevention. The Archon Assembly had declared the station neutral, but given it almost no protection. Everyone knew it was a test. If the species could not cooperate on research, then cooperation in other areas was impossible. It was also a place the Assembly had basically written off. Captain Lisa Henderson stepped forward from her station. She was tall, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been Daniel's second officer for 5 years and his executive officer for 2. She understood the situation immediately. Sir, that station is outside our patrol sector. Command will not approve a response. The protocols are clear about jurisdiction. Daniel knew she was right. The protocols existed for a reason. They prevented conflicts and confusion. But protocols were written by people who had never heard a distress call from people they could actually save. How many lives on Meridian Station? He asked. Raymond checked his database without being asked. Between 2,000 and 3,000, sir. Civilians and researchers. Some families, too. The station has been operating for 15 years. 2,000 lives. The number sat heavy in Daniel's chest. What is attacking them? Daniel asked. Raymond looked at his screens, confusion crossing his face. The signal mentions hostile forces, but does not identify them. I am pulling up the registration. The ship signatures matched the Krell Collective. The Krell. The announcement meant something different to each officer on the bridge. To some, it was an abstract threat. To others, it was death approaching. The Krell had conquered 12 systems in the past 8 years. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not. No mercy, no negotiation. Just conquest. Daniel made his choice. Set course for Meridian Station, maximum speed. All hands to battle stations. Lisa did not hesitate. She moved to her side and lowered her voice. Sir, I understand what you are doing, but the consequences will be severe. Command will see this as disobedience. I know, Daniel said. He kept his eyes on the view screen. But those people sent out a call. Someone has to answer. Behind them, First Officer Marcus Wells was already calculating trajectories and running combat simulations. Marcus was human, born and raised on Earth, with a mind that could process military strategy the way other people could breathe. He understood Deathworlds. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They learned to adapt, to find angles, to never waste anything. The Crow had technology and numbers. Humans had something else. Course laid in, sir, Marcus said. 17 minutes to station coordinates at full speed. The Endeavor can make the jump, but the escorts will need to push their engines hard. Inform the escort ships. Full speed, battle formation. Get me a visual on the station as soon as we arrive. The bridge erupted into controlled motion. Orders flowed from station to station. The human crew worked together like a machine that had been practiced 1,000 times. They were not the best equipped. Their ships were not the newest. But they were ready. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Victoria Hayes got the alert. She was a woman in her 40s, with hands that had fixed every system on the Endeavor at least 3 times. She pulled up the power requirements for maximum speed and let out a low whistle. Bridge, this is engineering. I can give you full power, but the engines will be hot. We cannot maintain this speed for more than 30 minutes without risk of shutdown. Understood, Chief, Daniel replied. We will not need longer. Victoria started pushing buttons and moving through the engine room, checking every system. Her team of young engineers watched her, learning how to coax maximum performance from equipment that was never designed to run this hard. This was human strength. Not bigger, not better equipped. Just willing to push further than anyone thought possible. The Endeavor and her sister ships jumped to faster than light speed. The stars stretched into lines. 30 minutes seemed like an eternity, but space was vast. The distance between safety and disaster had to be crossed before any battle could begin. Daniel sat back in his command chair. Lisa stood beside him, her face calm but her jaw tight. They both knew what they were rushing toward. 3 Krell battle cruisers meant odds of 1 to 3 against them, at minimum. The station's weapons were offline. The people there had no defense except what the Endeavor could provide. Sir, Raymond said quietly, Meridian Station just sent another message. They detected our jump signature. They are asking if help is coming. Daniel nodded slowly. He activated the communications channel himself. His voice was steady when he spoke. This is Commander Daniel Foster of the Earth Defense Fleet. We heard your call. We are coming. Do not give up. In the darkness of space, the Endeavor and her sister ships cut through the void at impossible speed. Behind them, Earth orbit seemed very far away. Ahead of them, 2,000 people waited for someone to care enough to try. The distress call had been answered. Now the hard part would begin. The Meridian Station appeared on the view screen as a cluster of gray structures connected by bridges and docking arms. It looked fragile against the black of space. Around it, 3 Krell battle cruisers moved like sharks that had caught the smell of blood. Daniel studied the formation. The Krell ships were large, heavily armored, and bristling with weapons. Each one could probably destroy the Endeavor in a direct exchange. 3 of them meant overwhelming force. The odds were not just bad. They were impossible, but impossible was just another word for something humans had not tried yet. Distance to the station, Daniel ordered. 2 million kilometers, sir. At current speed, we will arrive in 40 seconds. Marcus reported from his station. Daniel took a breath. In 40 seconds, everything would change. They would go from a peaceful patrol ship to a combatant in a war that was not theirs to fight. The Krell Collective would see them as a threat to be eliminated. There would be no talking, no negotiation. The Krell understood only conquest and destruction. Shields up. Charge all weapons to half capacity. We need to look dangerous without being aggressive. I want to give them a chance to back down. The Endeavor's shields shimmered into place, a blue glow that extended around the ship. The weapon systems hummed to life. The sister ships, the UES Pioneer and the UES Horizon, took formation on either side of the Endeavor. 3 small human vessels against forces that were supposed to be unstoppable. The view screen showed the Krell, ships detecting their arrival. The alien vessels shifted position, moving to block any approach to the station. A communication request came through, direct and sharp. This is Krell Dreadnought Vex 1. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Daniel activated the communications channel. His voice was calm and even. This is Commander Daniel Foster of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received a distress call from Meridian Station. We are here to provide assistance to those in need. Silence. Daniel knew what was happening in the Krell command centers. They were calculating odds. They were reviewing human military history. They were probably laughing at the size and capability of the human ships. The response came back with absolute certainty. Deathworlders, your species has no jurisdiction in this sector. The station will be destroyed. You will withdraw or be destroyed as well. You have 10 minutes to comply. Daniel did not waste time on arguments. He muted the communication and turned to Marcus. Get us between the station and those cruisers. I want the Endeavor in front. The Pioneer and Horizon take flanking positions. Tell them to hold formation no matter what happens. Marcus nodded. He understood what Daniel was doing. They were not going to win this fight through superior strength. But they could buy time. They could make it harder. They could do what humans did best when facing the impossible. Refuse to accept defeat. The Endeavor moved forward. The human ships took position, forming a defensive screen between the Krell and the station. It was an act of complete defiance. The Krell commanders probably thought the humans were insane. The countdown reached 0. The Krell opened fire. The first volley was massive. Energy beams and kinetic rounds filled the space between the fleets. Marcus's voice came sharp and clear. Incoming fire, evasive maneuvers now. The Endeavor banked hard, and the pilot, Captain Jake Patterson, pushed the ship's engines to dangerous limits. Human reflexes, honed over millions of years on a death world, reacted faster than most species could process. Jake had grown up learning to dodge. His ancestors had run from predators that were faster and stronger. That genetic memory lived in his hands as they moved across the flight controls. Most of the first volley missed. One beam caught the Endeavor's shield, and the impact sent the ship shaking. The structural integrity held, but barely. Return fire, Daniel commanded. The Endeavor's weapons came to life. The human laser cannons were not as powerful as the Krell weapons, but they were precise. Marcus had calculated firing solutions based on the Krell ship's movements. He knew how different species thought, how they predicted attacks. Human fighters had taught him to think around corners, to find angles that seemed impossible. One of his shots hit. It did not break the Krell shields, but it forced them to compensate. The Pioneer and Horizon added their fire, and suddenly the Krell were facing a coordinated attack from 3 angles at once. The alien commanders seemed confused. They expected human ships to retreat. They expected fear. Instead, the humans were fighting back, and they were fighting smart. In the Endeavor's engine room, Victoria Hayes watched the power fluctuation spike. Every shot they fired drained energy. Every hit they took damaged systems. She was already rerouting power from non-essential systems, pushing every ounce of power into the shields. "We are burning through power fast, sir," she reported. "If we keep fighting at this intensity, I can give you maybe 4 minutes before something critical gives." 4 minutes. Daniel heard the information and made a decision. They had come to protect the station. That meant they had to buy enough time for the people inside to prepare an evacuation. 4 minutes was more than nothing. "Acknowledged, Chief. Push the engines to the limit." The next exchange of fire was fierce. The Krell, realizing the humans were not going to flee, committed more firepower. A massive energy burst hit the Pioneer, and the ship's shields flared bright. For a moment, Daniel thought it was gone. But the Pioneer held formation. Commander Sarah Mitchell was not letting her crew falter. Then something changed in the Krell attack pattern. One of the massive cruisers launched a different weapon. The projectile was enormous, moving slower than the energy beams, but carrying far more destructive force. It was a planet-killer missile. Raymond's voice was tight with fear. "Sir, we are detecting a weapon lock. The missile is targeting the station directly. If it hits, the station will be destroyed along with everyone in it." No time for calculation. No time for debate. There was only action. "Jake, intercept course on that missile. Full power." Jake Patterson did not hesitate. He had been trained his whole life to face impossible odds. Every human who grew up on Earth learned that some things were worth any cost. He pushed the fighter into a course that no other pilot from any other species would have attempted. The G-forces would have crushed anyone not born of a death world. The fighter accelerated toward the missile. Jake's vision narrowed. His breathing steadied. This was what he had trained for. This was the moment that defined a human life. The fighter hit the missile head-on. The explosion was massive. The missile detonated in the upper atmosphere instead of at the station. The shockwave threw Jake's fighter toward the planet below, but emergency systems engaged. The canopy ejected just in time, and Jake fell toward the surface under emergency parachute. Alive but grounded for a moment, everything stopped. The Krell had never seen a species deliberately sacrifice a fighter to protect others. Their calculations of human behavior did not have this variable. Daniel saw his opening. He activated the emergency weapons array and coordinated with the other ships. 3 bursts of energy, synchronized perfectly, hit the Krell shields at their strongest point. The shields flickered. Just for a second. Just enough. The Krell commander made a decision. Losing a battlecruiser was unacceptable. These unpredictable humans had proven more dangerous than expected. The order came down to withdraw. The Krell fleet began moving away from Meridian Station, but as they pulled back, new alarms screamed through the station systems. The battle had damaged the station's core. Life support was failing. The very people they had come to save were now facing a different kind of death. The station that Daniel had fought so hard to protect was now a dying thing, collapsing into itself. The alarms from Meridian Station painted a picture of complete disaster. Core containment was failing. Pressure in the main sections was dropping. Life support would shut down completely in less than 30 minutes. Daniel stared at the data streaming across his console and forced himself to think. Clearly, they had saved the station from the Krell. Now they had to save the people inside. How many evacuation shuttles do they have? Daniel asked. Though he already knew the answer would not be good. Raymond checked the station's broadcast information. 4 shuttles, sir. Each can carry 500 people maximum. Total capacity is 2,000. We have approximately 2,300 people aboard the station, Lisa said quietly. The math was simple and brutal. Even if the shuttles worked perfectly and made multiple runs, 300 people would not make it. Some would be trapped by the failing systems. Some would get crushed by structural collapse. The numbers told a story of inevitable death. Daniel refused to accept that story. "All ships," he broadcast. "This is the Endeavor. We are moving to dock with Meridian Station. All available cargo bays, launch bays, and non-essential compartments are being converted to evacuation space. We will take as many people as we can carry. Prepare docking clamps and extend all docking arms." Lisa's eyes widened. "Sir, if we open our compartments to an unstable station, the station's collapse could take us down with it." "I know," Daniel said. "But we are not leaving 300 people to die when we can do something about it." The Endeavor moved toward the station. Around them, the other ships did the same. Marcus was already working with the station's surviving personnel, coordinating where people should go. The Pioneer and Horizon began extending their docking arms, preparing to receive refugees. Every available space became a rescue chamber. The first shuttle launched from the station, carrying 500 people. Many were researchers, scientists who had dedicated their lives to the work that happened on Meridian. Behind them came the second shuttle, and then the third. The fourth was already loading when structural collapse began in one of the main sections. Inside the station, things were chaos and darkness. Dr. Amara, a Taishan researcher, was helping people move toward the docking bays. Her blue-skinned species was strong and quick. She used her strength to help the weak and injured. But there were too many people and too little time. Then the human rescue team arrived. Officer Angela Cooper led the team into the station's corridors. She was built like most humans were built, not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. But she had something that transcended physical capability. She had determination. She had chosen to run into a dying station to pull people out. Behind her came medics, engineers, and soldiers. They moved through the darkening passages with equipment lights cutting through the shadows. Every person they found was guided toward the docking bays. When someone was injured, they were carried. When someone panicked, they were encouraged. When there seemed to be no hope, the humans refused to stop searching. In one section cut off by a structural collapse, Angela found a group of refugee children. They had been temporary residents on the station, children from a colony conquered by the Krell, taken in by the researchers. Now they huddled in the dark, terrified and alone. Angela did not hesitate. She held out her hand, and the children took it. Some were too small to walk fast, so she and her team carried them, moving back through the corridors toward the docking bay. Behind them, the station groaned and buckled. Metal twisted. Walls crumbled. They made it through with seconds to spare. The children were loaded onto the Endeavor. Angela paused for just a moment, checking that every single one was safe. Then she turned around and went back into the station. Medic Officer Kevin Parks was in the medical section, working with the station's few remaining doctors. Many of the evacuees were injured. Some had radiation exposure. Some had crush injuries. Kevin worked with steady hands, stabilizing patients for transport, administering medicines, keeping people alive long enough to reach the human ships. A Valorian scientist had a head injury that should have been fatal. Kevin applied pressure, stopped the bleeding, and arranged for the man to be transported to the Endeavor's medical bay. There was a moment when Kevin wondered if it was worth the effort. The man might not survive anyway. Then Kevin looked into the Valorian's eyes and saw the will to live. He saw someone who wanted to continue existing, to learn, to grow. That was enough. Back on the Endeavor, the ship's doctor, Lauren Hendricks, worked in overdrive. She had medical training from Earth, a world where people had to survive catastrophic injuries because there was no one else to save you. She pushed her staff to the limits, stabilizing patients, performing emergency procedures, keeping the evacuation running smoothly. The fourth shuttle was the last to launch. It carried the final group of survivors from the station. As it disengaged from the docking bay, the core containment failure reached critical levels that the station exploded in a bright flash. The explosion came fast, a wave of energy and debris expanding outward. The Endeavor's docking arms retracted just in time. The Pioneer and Horizon broke free of their docking connections. All three ships accelerated away from the blast. For a moment, there was silence on the bridges. The station that had called for help, that had been saved from the Krell, was gone, destroyed, lost. But as the smoke cleared and the radiation readings were processed, the reports came in. The final count was checked and rechecked. Officers did not trust the numbers at first. Not every single person from Meridian Station had made it out alive. All 2,300. It was impossible. The evacuation should have failed. People should have been left behind. But it had not happened that way. The human crew, without any special authority, without any official permission, without any expectation of reward, had decided that every life mattered. And they had acted on that belief. On the Endeavor's bridge, Daniel sat in his command chair and felt the weight lift slightly. They had not won a victory. They had simply refused to accept defeat. They had taken an impossible situation and made it possible through determination and refusal to abandon others. Lisa stood beside him, watching the evacuation reports finalize. "Sir, we are going to be court-martialed for this. Command will say we violated protocols, exceeded our authority, and put our ships at risk without authorization." Daniel looked at the refugee list. Researchers, families, children, survivors of colonies destroyed by the Krell, given a second chance. He looked at his crew, exhausted and satisfied, knowing they had done the right thing. "I know," he said, "but I would do it again." And in that moment, something had changed in the galaxy. Not in the ships or the stations, not in the weapons or the technology, but in the understanding of what strength truly meant. The Krell had tried to conquer through force. The humans had conquered through sacrifice. The galaxy would never quite look at humanity the same way again. The news spread across the galactic communications network faster than any ship could travel. The recordings from Meridian Station showed everything. The human ships arriving, the coordinated defense, the sacrifice of the fighter to stop the planet-killer missile, the massive evacuation that saved every single life. The Archon Assembly convened an emergency session within hours. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Grand Hall on the station orbiting the Valurian homeworld. The debates were fierce and often contradictory. Ambassador Kesh, a tall Valurian with gray-white skin and sharp analytical eyes, opened the first argument. "We have been wrong about humanity. The recordings are clear. Commander Foster and his crew acted with honor and sacrifice. They have proven their species is capable of moral courage." But Ambassador Voix, representing the older established powers, disagreed strongly. "This is exactly why humans cannot be trusted. They operate outside established protocols. They make decisions that affect galactic politics without authorization. What happens if they decide to challenge our authority next? What happens if they decide to take what they want?" "They had the power to take the station's resources and did not," Kesh countered. "They had the power to demand control and did not. They simply saved lives." The arguments continued for hours. Some species wanted to immediately integrate humanity into the highest councils. Others wanted to increase restrictions, fearing a species that would act so rashly and so powerfully. The Archon Assembly had been structured for centuries on the principle that power should be limited and controlled. Humanity's actions violated that principle, and the Assembly did not know how to respond. Meanwhile, Commander Daniel Foster and his crew faced their own trial. They arrived back at Earth orbit to find a formal inquiry waiting. The military command had been forced to investigate. Daniel had violated multiple protocols. He had exceeded his authority. He had put his ships at risk without permission. According to the official rules, he had committed serious crimes. The trial was held in the Earth Defense Force headquarters. Daniel stood before a panel of officers and civilians, all of them humans who had been given the responsibility of deciding if he should be punished. The prosecutor presented the case methodically. Every protocol violation was documented. Every risk was calculated and presented as reckless endangerment. By the official measures, the case was clear. Daniel had broken the rules. Then the defense began. Commander Foster was informed of a situation where 2,000 lives were in immediate danger. The defense officer said. A call for help had been sent out. The station's location was known. The danger was real and imminent. The question is not whether protocol was followed. The question is what humanity means. Do we save lives when we can? Or do we follow rules that prevent us from helping? The gallery was filled with officers and civilians. Some had come to see justice done. Some had come to understand. By the end of the day, the tide had shifted. The trial was not about whether Daniel had broken rules. It was about whether the rules themselves had been broken by not saving lives. The verdict came down. Daniel Foster was acquitted. Moreover, the rules were modified. Human ships were now authorized to respond to distress calls outside their patrol sectors if immediate danger to life was established. The protocol that had prevented Daniel from saving lives was removed from the books, but the political consequences went far deeper. Representatives from multiple species began arriving at Earth. They wanted to meet the Deathworlders, who had proven so different from expectations. Cash came personally, bringing with him Dr. Amara, the Tyrshan researcher who had been on Meridian Station. Daniel met with them in a formal setting, but the conversation quickly became personal. Cash was direct. Your people have changed something in the galaxy, Cash said. For the first time, the Krell backed away from conquest. Not because they were defeated militarily, but because they saw that humans would sacrifice everything to protect strangers. That is not calculated behavior. That is not something the Krell understand. We understand that lives matter, Daniel replied simply. More than rules. More than jurisdiction. More than anything else. Dr. Amara added her perspective. The station was abandoned by the Archon Assembly. They expected us to fail. They wanted us to fail. They saw the station as an experiment that had outlived its usefulness. But humanity came anyway. Over the following weeks, Daniel and his crew began receiving formal requests from worlds across the galaxy. They were asked to speak about their decision. They were asked to explain what drove humans to act so boldly. Slowly, a movement began to form. It started small. A few species approached Daniel with a proposal. They wanted to form an alliance outside the Archon Assembly. They wanted an organization based not on power and control, but on mutual defense and preservation of life. They wanted humanity at the center of this new coalition. The proposal was radical. It would fundamentally challenge the Archon Assembly's authority. It would create a rival power center. Some human political leaders wanted no part of it, fearing retaliation from the older powers. But Daniel accepted the proposal. With one condition. He requested a meeting with representatives from all interested species. When they gathered, he spoke with the quiet certainty that had defined his decisions from the beginning. We will form this alliance, Daniel said, but it will not be based on human dominance. It will not be based on us imposing our values on others. It will be based on a simple principle. All life has value. All lives deserve protection. We will defend each other not because we are strong, but because we believe this is right. The proposal was accepted. The formation of the Unified Defense Coalition was announced. It would include humans, Valorians, Tyrshan, and representatives from 7 other species that had been marginalized by the Archon Assembly. The older powers did not respond with immediate hostility, but with uncertainty. For the first time in centuries, the galactic structure was being challenged. Not through military conquest, but through moral authority. The humans had done something that the Archon Assembly could not explain or control. The Krell Collective remained silent. Their commanders were calculating new strategies. Some Krell colonies, particularly those on the edges of the Empire, began requesting contact with the new coalition. Not all of them, but enough to suggest that even among the conquerors, humanity's philosophy of preservation was taking hold. On Meridian Station's former location, a memorial was being built. It would honor the lives saved and the humans who had sacrificed to protect strangers. The memorial would become the headquarters of the Unified Defense Coalition. The galaxy was changing. It was not changing through weapons or conquest. It was changing because humans had proven something fundamental, that strength came not from domination, but from the willingness to put others' lives before your own. 3 months later, the Unified Defense Coalition Station opened its main docking bay to the largest gathering of military ships the galaxy had seen in a generation. The station itself had been rebuilt from Meridian's ruins, transformed from a symbol of failed cooperation into a beacon of new hope. Commander Daniel Foster stood on the observation deck, watching ships from 10 different species work through coordinated defense drills. Each vessel moved with precision, following tactical patterns that would have been impossible just months before. But something had changed in the galaxy. The realization that humans thought differently about warfare had spread quickly. Captain Lisa Henderson joined him, carrying data reports in her hands. She had been promoted to Admiral of the Coalition Fleet, a position that reflected the confidence placed in human leadership. "The training programs are working better than expected, sir," Lisa said. "The Valorians are adapting to the tactical doctrine. The Tyrshan fighters are incorporating human evasion patterns. Even the Krell observers seem to be taking notes." Daniel nodded. The presence of Krell observers was unusual. The collective had not joined the coalition, but they had requested permission to observe the military operations. It was a sign that something fundamental had shifted. The Krell Empire, which had built itself on conquest and domination, was beginning to understand that the new strength in the galaxy did not come from weapons alone. In the shipyards orbiting the station, Chief Engineer Victoria Hayes supervised the construction of the Coalition's newest vessel class. The design combined human innovation with Valorian engineering and Tyrshan weapons systems. Every species contributed their strengths. No one species dominated the design. Victoria worked with the same determination that had kept the Endeavor running through impossible battles. She pushed her team harder than most would have considered fair, but she also gave them support that no other engineer in the galaxy provided. Human culture, shaped by a Deathworld's challenges, understood that people worked best when they felt cared for and valued. Young engineers from 6 different species worked in Victoria's section. They learned not just how to build reliable equipment, but how to build equipment that could be repaired in the field, modified on the fly, improved through cooperation. Victoria's methods were spreading through the Coalition's technical services, simple, reliable, adaptable. The opposite of the Krell philosophy of overwhelming force. First Officer Marcus Wells had been appointed as the head of the Coalition's military academy. The school trained officers and soldiers from every member species. Marcus taught them something that most galactic militaries had forgotten: that strategy could be more powerful than raw firepower. On the first day of his lectures, Marcus stood before a mixed group of recruits and posed a simple question. What makes humans dangerous? The answers varied. Some said superior reflexes. Others mentioned adaptability. One Valorian officer suggested human determination. Marcus shook his head. We are dangerous because we care about something more than ourselves. The Krell built an empire on the principle that strength means taking what you want. We built ours on the principle that strength means protecting what matters. That difference makes all the difference in war. He showed them recordings from Meridian Station. The decision to jump to the distress call. The sacrifice of Jake Patterson's fighter. The evacuation of 2,300 people from a dying station. The recordings showed battle tactics and survival strategies, but more importantly, they showed human philosophy applied to warfare. The Krell expected us to run away, Marcus continued. They expected us to follow the rules and ignore the distress call. They did not expect us to care more about lives than about protocols. That is what makes humans powerful. We introduce variables that enemy calculations cannot account for. Jake Patterson, now recovered from his crash and promoted to wing commander, led the fighter pilot training program. He worked with pilots from every coalition species, teaching them the aerodynamic thinking that had kept humans alive on a Deathworld atmosphere. On Earth, we learned to dodge things bigger and faster than us, Jake told a class of mixed-species pilots. We learned to use the environment against our enemies. We learned to find angles that should not work but do. That is what I am teaching you. The training was brutal. Several alien pilots struggled with the maneuvers that came naturally to humans. But those who stuck with it discovered new capabilities they had not known they possessed. By the end of the training cycle, human and alien pilots were flying coordinated patterns that should have been impossible. Back in the administrative sector, Daniel faced a different kind of battle. The Archon Assembly had not accepted the Coalition's creation gracefully. They had begun a political and economic campaign designed to isolate the new organization. Trade agreements were canceled. Diplomatic relations were strained. The message was clear: challenge our authority and face consequences. But the Coalition was holding firm. Member species understood what they had gained: protection, mutual defense, a structure based on cooperation rather than domination. It was worth the economic cost. Daniel met regularly with Ambassador Kesh and Dr. Amara. The Valorian and Tyrshan representatives had become his closest advisors. They understood galactic politics in ways that humans were still learning. The Archon Assembly will not escalate to open conflict, Kesh advised during one meeting. To do so would reveal the weakness in their system. They maintain power through the appearance of stability. We have shown that alternatives exist. That is more threatening to them than any weapon. Dr. Amara added her perspective. Humanity's philosophy is spreading faster than the Archon Assembly can contain it. I have received messages from researchers across the galaxy asking to join the Coalition. They are tired of the Assembly's control. They want to work in an environment where cooperation is valued over competition. 5 months into the Coalition's existence, something unexpected happened. A Krell colony on the outer edge of the Empire announced they were withdrawing from the collective and requesting Coalition membership. It was a shocking development. The Krell were not supposed to cooperate. They were not supposed to abandon their dominant structure. But the colony, made up of younger Krell who had grown up during the period of expansion, had different ideas about what strength meant. They had watched humans sacrifice themselves to protect strangers. They had seen it recorded and analyzed and discussed. Some of them began to believe that their empire's philosophy was wrong. The older Krell leadership was outraged. They attempted to suppress the withdrawal. But the colony had prepared carefully, and their transition to Coalition protection was smooth. The message was clear. Even within the Krell collective, humanity's example was changing minds. On the station's main observation deck, a year after, the distress call from Meridian. Daniel Foster stood with Lisa Henderson, Marcus Wells, Victoria Hayes, and Jake Patterson. They watched as the new ships of the Unified Defense Coalition completed a coordinated maneuver. Every ship moved with purpose. Every captain understood what they were defending. "Do you think it will last?" Lisa asked quietly. Daniel considered the question carefully. "I think people want to believe in something bigger than themselves. I think the Krull showed them what happens when you build on conquest and domination. We are showing them what happens when you build on preservation and mutual defense. Those ideas will outlast any individual threat." The 5 officers stood together, watching the future they had created. Behind them, the reconstructed Meridian Station served as home base for the Coalition. In its deepest section, the memorial to those who had been saved contained the names of every person evacuated from the dying station. Not everyone agreed with what the humans had done. The Archon Assembly still viewed them with suspicion. Some Crow remained committed to the old Empire's philosophy. But something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. Strength no longer meant the ability to destroy. It meant the willingness to protect. Victory no longer meant conquest. It meant preservation. The galaxy's understanding of what made a species valuable, what made a leader worthy, what made a culture sustainable, had been rewritten by humans who had simply answered a distress call. On distant Earth, new generations grew up knowing that their species had changed something in the cosmos. Not through weapons or conquest, but through simple, unwavering belief in the value of life. That belief, more than any technology, had become humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. The Deathworlders had become teachers, not of domination, but of something more fundamental. They had become teachers of what it meant to be strong enough to care,